Guten Tag, and welcome to another quality content module freshly ground by small beans, where ideas are always percolating. If you enjoy this pod, please consider joining our community over at patreon.com/smallbeans, where only $3 a month gets you access to double the content, including Patreon-exclusive series like Spiel Boys and Star Trek: The Next Futurama, plus bonus episodes of your SB favorites. Much love, and enjoy the thing.
It's time for dads now. Look, it's all about dads. I don't want you talking about anything but dads. 'Cause it's all dads now. Yeah. It's Inside Dads.
Inside Dads! Yeah.
I'm deep in them.
Deep in the dads, everybody.
Yeah.
Yes. Hello, David.
Yeah, that's me. David Bell.
David Bell.
Bell.
That's right. And this is Abe Epperson. And
Spell it, Abe.
Epperson.
Thank you.
And we are your daddies.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? You know, or are the fans the daddies?
We fathered all of you. No, we fathered them.
We're the
we
dads.
touched tips, and then you all came out of our butts.
Yep.
That's how sex
we
works.
peed on your mom's pee and she got pregnant. That's because we know how sex works. Everyone is aware of the meme, the dad movie. It's almost as prevalent as the dad bod meme, or the dad joke meme. At least circles of people who follow film discourse online, like you freaks. So basically, Dave and I both realized early in our friendship that we had a fascination with movies that align with the internet's version of what a dad movie is. And we started talking about, let's form a unified dad theory. Let's form a genre, as instead of just isolated details like patriotism or sacrifice or the concept of being an underdog or getting a sex prize. Let's really figure this out.
Yeah.
What are the themes going on? What are the ways in which they operate? And mainly, what has Hollywood been saying to everybody that this is what it means to dad? Because I think that's important in this day and age.
We're cracking the dad code.
We are, and we're not necessarily the right people, but we are the people.
Which makes us the best people.
Neither of us are dads technically, although Dave likes to mention the fact that he's about to mention that he's a cat.
I wasn't
dad.
going to say anything.
Yeah, you were, and I
wasn't going to say a thing.
Yeah, now you fucking wily little
I was
piece of shit.
going to say I fathered several children in multiple states, along with being a cat dad.
And you can't keep you down, man.
No,
no.
I can't go into those states anymore because of speeding tickets that I did not pay.
Because you're speeding so fast away from your children.
Exactly, and multiple robberies.
But I think we're both dad adjacent because as I mentioned, we have bonded over the concept of dad movies.
Yeah, I think it's really funny because I don't want to speak for you. I mentioned in the last episode that I do in fact have a dad who isn't necessarily like, he's not like a football watching, beer clugging, all-American dad. But it's funny because I'm not sure where my personal fascination with dad movies come. I think it has to do with the fact that this is what Hollywood considers dads to be. And
right.
it's a stereotype of what makes an older man.
Right.
An older dad man. And so, like, for that reason, as we talked about in the first episode, this has nothing to do with actual, like, gender or, like, who people are and who has to watch these films. It doesn't really mean this is what dads are.
Right.
And by finding the ultimate dad film, I think we're not finding necessarily a movie that like will universally capture all of dads in the world.
Right.
It's to capture a specific vibe of a movie that is known as the dad film, because I think it's most associated with like boomer era dads. That's the other thing. It's not even like younger dads necessarily. I think it's boomer era dads.
All of the virtues and the principles of that era that are just loudly present in what we've come to consider, at least on the internet, a dad movie.
Yeah, and
So
I would
you're
even
absolutely
argue
right.
it might be a little conservative leaning.
Yeah, for real.
In what it, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I do think we'll find dad films that aren't. I mean, I don't think a lot of them are going to be political either.
Right.
And I don't think that it'll necessarily be like you look at a movie like Field of Dreams, which is part of the genre we're exploring today. There's parts in that where he's actually kind of left leaning, right? Like they're arguing against like banning books and shit like that.
That's right.
So like I don't think that's exclusive. I think it's more to do with like a centrist reverence for America, but we'll get into it.
We'll get into that, but I think you're absolutely spot on. But the way in which we're going to do this podcast is we're going to kind of approach each movie anew and then talk about at the end kind of how this is vibes with our preconceptions of what a dad movie is as we isolate kind of and deconstruct what the dad movie is.
We're going to cage that daddy.
Mm-hmm. And we're approaching it, as I said, because we want to isolate it into a genre. And we found out fairly early that since there is no technical dad genre, there is a lot of other genres that also just have dad type movies.
Sorry, on that subject, because this is traditionally called dad porn. And let me tell you, just don't Google that. If you Google that, you're not going to get the films that we're talking about. You're going to get...
I mean, you might get what you want, but it's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, you'll get a bunch of other films that you can watch those if you want. They're just not the films that we are exploring on this podcast.
Mm-hmm. But yet.
Yeah. No, there'll be seasons of this, and at a certain point, yeah.
We'll see. We'll see how long we want to get inside this dad, which is the name of our first segment. But before we go to that, I want us to talk about just what movie are we talking about today. And so today, the genre that we chose is the sports movie. And we decided to go along with the what year was it? What's the fucking year of this? 2006's We Are Marshall, starring Matthew McConaughey, Matthew Fox, Ian McShane, Anthony Mackie, Kate Mara, January Jones, David Strathern. So we got a bunch of people in this movie.
Did you mention Robert Patrick?
Robert Patrick is in this.
He sure is. This is a film, Abe, that I have never seen.
You had never seen it. So in that vein, in that spirit, tell me what We Are Marshall is about in a nutshell.
I will. It is a sports movie, as we established, something that I don't watch that many of. This is about it takes place in the 70s, and it's Marshall is the name of the town, I do believe. It's a college
The university
football team. High school? Okay, college. It felt like college. A college football team that the whole town is like rallying around in love. They have just lost a game in at an away game, as they call it in the biz.
Oh, this is gonna be fun. You know nothing about sports. I forgot.
know nothing about sports, Abe.
An away game.
So they did an away game, and the whole town is like, "Ah, shucks," and they got connections to the town, girlfriends, parents, etc.
Mm-hmm.
They get on that plane with Robert Patrick as the coach, and the plane
With the
fucking
T-1000.
crashes, which is based, by the way. This movie is a true story, which
Yes.
is, I think, an important thing. And it was in reality the biggest death accident involving a sports team in history, American history. I looked it up. So this plane fucking crashes right outside of this town. And so for very good reason, they're like, maybe this year we won't have a football program, because they're all dead. And that's reasonable. But the whole town is like, no, we want it. Anthony Mackie, one of the surviving football members, because not everybody, he's injured. Like a few people stayed behind for various reasons, including Matthew Fox, who like did a real Final Destination where he's like, here, you get on the plane. So they gut punch our heart. You know, whole team dead, mass funeral, town is mourning, and then the Anthony Mackie is like, we're bringing back the football team. We're not shutting down. We're not putting it on hold. So he goes to what's his name? David Stratham.
Stratham up on Avon.
We'll call him Jason Statham. He goes to Jason Statham, and he says, you know, bring it back, and you can start with a coach. So they have to find a coach. They can't find a coach until Matthew McConaughey shows up, and he's like, I'll be your coach. For no reason but to heal this town. We'll get into it.
Yep.
And then the movie is about them being real scrappy, putting together this college football team full of like fresh. Like they try to get freshmen, they try to get people from other sports, and it's a sports movie. It's a sports movie. Where like this is the A plot is basically Matthew McConaughey bringing this team to a victory. And the whole town gets behind it. They are Marshall. They're healing the town. It's not about winning or losing or how you play the game, as he points it out, because very rightly so. The entire point of the movie is like, we're not trying to win. We just need to have a basketball or a football team again.
That's
like,
right.
It's just about healing them and getting this going again. So that's what they do. Meanwhile, Ian McShane lost his son. And so there's a subplot of him and Katie Mara, and or Kate Mara. I said her name all wrong. Kate Mara, where she was engaged to his son, and he like Goodwill Huntings her. He's like, get out of here, get out of this town, go to L.A. So she does and gives him back the ring, and you know he heals. No one mourns Robert Patrick, but he just turns into goo anyway and like comes back to life
and destroys the plane.
And that's it. It's a sports movie. There's underdogs. Are they going to win? They win. And then I looked the team up, and as the ending notes, they didn't win much more after that, which is very, I don't know, kind of funny to me.
Yeah. Let's get inside this dad, man. And let's talk about let's frame up and discuss like exactly what's going on here. So as you mentioned, it's like a steel mill town.
We find our first pattern, right? Middle America, good old days.
Middle America, that's right. Yeah, it's the like blue collar kind of atmosphere. It's very important to the dad movie because then it unlocks the type of people that we want to, you know, encourage, which are the blue collar types, the salt of the earth. And the movie starts with a kind of like retrospective, kind of like Remember the Titans and other sports movies that are based on true stories. They kind of do this telescoping bookend thing where it goes, this is the movie, but also outside of the movie. And they want to let us know that they turn off a fountain for 1 minute once a year to remember these dead kids.
Yep.
And so that kind of tells you the reverence that's at stake. I mean, obviously, it's not that hard to have reverence for dead kids.
Right. I'm going to just say on the top of this, no offense to all those dead kids who died in the 70s.
Yeah, for real.
We're talking about this movie, not the true event the movie was based off of. I just want to make that clear because there were parts in this movie I found funny that maybe I shouldn't have found funny.
No, me too. Because
Okay.
we're broken inside.
This is also, I think, going to be a daddy film thing based off a true story. I think that's going to be a common, not all the time, obviously.
But we're going to see it pop up, and I want to know what that is because I think it adds a little pepper to the emotional resonance, right?
Yeah.
That it's not just
we have to respect this story.
It's not just fictionalized. I mean, it is, but it's not just like made up. It's and you're manipulating me to feel the feelings of dad, but rather this shit happened it means more. I think that's just true with any game, any movie that is based on a true story.
Yes, but it definitely helps with the respect and reverence, even if it's not at all what the movie depicts it as being. If a movie says this is based off a true story, the word based is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
But it automatically, if it's a tragic story, gives them like a pass.
An unlock. Yeah, they get into those heartstrings, and they don't even need the foreplay, baby.
Yeah.
They're gonna just fuck those heartstrings.
Right. Speaking of no foreplay, I didn't pay attention to the credits, so imagine my shock when like the first minute shows me Kate Mara, January Jones, Robert Patrick, Matthew Fox, and Ian McShane.
Yeah. So you got surprises all throughout this movie, is what
all
you're
the way,
saying.
yes, and I don't want to spoil it, all the way to the ending credits.
That's
the most
right.
shocking part of the movie for me. The movie that made me go, what?
What?
Yeah.
Oh. Yep. We see a scene where the old coach, T1000, is basically telling these kids, it's not how you play the game. It's about winning. I'm proud of you no matter what, but I won't accept this loss with you. It's the old way of thinking about football that, it's not even old. It's just how sports is kind of done.
Right.
You need this winner's mentality. And so we're setting up in our early on what we're going to deconstruct here. How is it going to be a different sports movie from every sports movie?
Yeah.
Because every sports movie, it is kind of about how you play the game. It's about like what you do on the field and you stand up to it. This movie's saying something slightly different.
Yeah, it still follows the formula, but
It still follows the formula,
it is
for sure.
most sports movies you watch and you go, okay, they're going to lose for a while and then they're going to win, which is, that's personally how I feel. I'm not the best sports movie person, but that's part of my feeling is that's the sports movies are very predictable.
Yeah.
Because it's like, they're going to what do you need? You need a third act where something's going wrong for the heroes. Well, it's a sports movie. So what goes wrong for a sports team? They lose. What goes right for a sports team? They win. It's very simple.
It's very simple. But like we talked about last episode, a lot of genres are simple.
Yeah.
Like
romantic
romance,
comedy.
It's like either they're together or they're not, There are things that you can do. Someone can get injured and, it can be a bittersweet victory or something like that. Or a moral victory, but a actual loss. But like ultimately, these are kind of binary systems and they're not designed to be complex. We are talking about dad movies after all.
And can I start with, I compared the Judge to a romantic comedy, a chick flick. Can I say what the one that this reminded me of?
Yes, please.
This is the Daddy Mary Poppins.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is absolutely that. Because we need a coach to save this town.
Yes, we do.
Yep. Because after all this town has a bunch of dead kids and coaches and no football team.
Yep. A lot of father and son, a lot of fathers missing sons,
Uh-huh.
A lot of sons missing fathers.
And several people, like you mentioned, there's a few injured players, like Anthony Mackie, Matthew Fox, the assistant coach, got around, the Final Destination, as you mentioned. And we get kind of the opening scenes are kind of just portraits of like the town and how the town is grieving. We get Ian McShane, who's like the owner / president of the steel mill and a pillar of the community.
Again, manly. He's got to be manly. So they're like, let's make him part of the steel mill. Wait, did you skip over the crash? I guess the crash isn't very daddy.
What do you want to talk about?
I just wanted to note the small townness where they want to show that it's small town America. And one of the ways they show that is when the plane crashes, the entire town like shows up. And I was like, I don't think that's how it happened. I don't think the town showed up.
I think it was a distant, forest that they saw a fireball. And they people.
They hand him the coach book. And I'm like, I don't think they could have found that.
They found that in the wreckage immediately.
I do think that's important because it's like the holy tome of the movie is this coach book. And it's really, pressing the small townness. All right. Anyhow.
That's right. No, that's right. But it's not much dadness other than there's tragedy. Something we did mention earlier in the last episode was just how inciting incidents occur with a tragedy. Something about dad films, or at least these genres of dad films so far.
Yeah.
But we get David Strathairn, who's basically, he's the non-football guy. He's just like an administrator. I think maybe I forget if he's the dean. But yeah, he's a stuffed shirt. And he's like, he's told by Ian McShane, we don't need a football team. It's just a reminder of what we lost. So let's just end this program. And, you know, he's like, okay, Strathairn's like, okay, all right. That's, I guess, what we're doing. But Anthony Mackie hates this because it's not fair to those who are still alive and want to play football and their life's just getting started and football is their life. So students start to protest, give us back this program. And the whole town is like, give us back football. And they go to when they're canceling, like there's like a board meeting where they're going to cancel the team. And there's a protest where they're just all standing there like serial killers.
Yeah, this is a real... I think this might be a dad film thing, but I'm not... this is a lot of things. This is very Sorkin. And of course, Sorkin and dad films go hand in hand, which is like scrappy. It's in the... And they all clapped. It's a quote, and then they all clapped moment, which is they look out the window and the whole town is out there and they start chanting, "We are Marshall." And once again, I was like, I don't think that's how it happened, but sure. Like they're scrappy. They're showing support. They're all there. These nerds want to shut down the football program and we're not going to let them.
These nerds. Yeah. But I mean, they got a point, right? Like, the grief, a reminder of what we lost. Like, do they need that right now? The town is...
I would argue that the town could have skipped a year. I would have argued.
Could have skipped a year.
Because, again, the whole point at the end is like, we're just trying to get football back. And it's like, well, you could have done that next year. Like... There's no reason to rush it.
And it's clear the movie kind of represents this, that it's not so simple. Some people who are even in the protest, like, protest the protest. They walk out because they're like, I don't know how I feel about this.
Right.
Including Kate Mara, who, like, in the next scene, tries to give back Ian McShane the ring that Chris, the dead quarterback, and his son gave her. So they're affianced. And he tells her to wear it every day.
Yeah. Ian McShane has to mourn his son, but it's a dad film, so he can't be a wuss about it, you know? Mm-hmm. He's got to be a real Ian McShane type.
Yeah, he's got to
So they have to cut to him at a steel mill every now and then to be like, look at him. Yeah. He's manly. He's mourning his son in a manly way.
Yeah. But I think it's important that, like, not just emotionally how the arc works, he tells her to wear it every day, meaning he can't move on and she has to bear this weight with him.
Yeah.
But it's also this thing where we get a father figure telling someone, a younger figure, but in this case, definitely, you know, a daughter kind of figure.
Yeah.
You have to live in my world.
Yep. And now we got another thread, father-daughter, which we talked about in The Judge. The reverence for the father-daughter relationship, to the point that this isn't even his daughter, and he is now like, I am your daddy now. And she should be like, my boyfriend died, not my dad. I still have a dad. And he's like, no, you don't. I'm your dad.
I'll fucking kill you. I'm your dad.
I'll fight your dad.
So yeah, it turns out the first step you need, they end up winning. Like they're like, all right, you know what? The protest worked. There's so many people. They all want their program. You know what? We're going to we're going to keep the football. And the first step, though, is that since the T1000 is out of commission, we got to go get us a coach.
Yeah.
So David Strathairn goes to Matthew Fox, this only surviving coach, and is like, you should do it. I don't know anything about sport.
Are you fucking kidding me?
He's like, I'm fucking out. I'm not gonna move on. This is fucked. And
I have a feeling that the way they treat his character in real life was different. Because, like, spoilers, he doesn't go back to coaching after this movie. And it's like, yeah, I think this was a really fucked up experience for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At one point, he even says in a later scene where he's like, I recruited these kids and told, like, their families I would protect them, and then I immediately took them to a plane and they died. Like, I feel like I did this, and he did.
Yeah, and
he
they
killed
treat
those
it.
kids.
They obviously they address that stuff, but they treat it like this was a healing thing for him. And it was like, I don't
Right.
know. I think he fought this the whole way and probably didn't want to.
Yeah,
be
he probably
there.
didn't want to be there, but also it was like once the momentum was going, he was like, I gotta be a part of it, otherwise I look like a dick. So that's probably what happened. Who knows?
Yeah.
Though. But we also get a sequence where Strathairn's calling all of the like alumnus, the alumni, to be like, hey, anyone want to coach? And everyone's like, no, I'm not gonna touch that.
Yeah, I just want to note this is the first of 2 crossing off a list montages the movie throws at us.
Hell yeah, it does. This movie is a montage. I love this
It
movie's
really
montages. But no one accepts it because they're like, I don't want to. That whole football program's a turd. I'm not gonna. Even
Yeah, you got a bunch of dead kids.
Enter Matthew McConaughey, who reads about Marshall in the paper. And,
Yeah, they show him earlier, and it's a real like. It's almost like a non sequitur because they show him in the beginning where everybody's listening to the game, and then they show him doing it, and then they never talk about him again. And it was like,
right.
oh, okay,
it's
so
just a
I guess
guy?
Matthew McConaughey is here, but like then he disappears for like a half hour. It feels like.
Yeah, it's because he's not a part of the town. So he's just there following because he follows football, but he isn't inside. And that's the whole thing is he's going to become an outsider. And the first time we really get to know him is we see him hanging out with his kids.
Dressed like his character from Dazed and Confused.
That's right. And Strathairn's there to like, because he called him up and he's like, hey, I'll coach for you. And you know, Strathairn's at the end of his rope, so he's like, I don't think I need to. I think I need a coach, but I don't know why this guy is calling me because no one seems to want this job. And this is where we get another dad aspect because he's hanging with his kids, and so we know that McConaughey is fertile. This we know.
Yep, he's a daddy. He's also a straight shooter.
Straight shooter.
He says what's on his mind. He tells a lot of elaborate stories. This is skipping ahead a little bit, but he tells about the story of his son shitting his pants.
Right.
Which again, dad
another
films
dad trope.
Love poop. Love pooping.
poop and piss.
and piss.
It's a part of the dad.
It's
I
all to
guess
say
it's
there's a
dad's.
first time for everything. This story of his son. So he tells these folksy long stories. He's a little out there, a little kooky, a little unconventional within the system, which is another dad thing. And yeah, he again straight shooter.
I do want to unpack that just because you mentioned moving ahead. I want to go back, but I do want to mention when he's talking about the son crapping the pants story. I want to unpack first. There's never a normal conversation with this guy.
No, he
This
is
one thing.
unhinged. I would argue he is a maniac.
Anytime you ask him a question and he's going to give you something else.
Yeah.
Second, he uses the example to explain, as you said, there's a first time for everything, which means that he's not embarrassed at all that he hasn't changed a diaper in 4 years.
Right.
Like
Again,
he
'cause
says
he's
this
a-
about his
he's a
4-year-old kid. Yeah, his dad. That's fine. And I guess it's 1970. So it's a different time, but still, he's not embarrassed about changing diapers. That's women's work. But third, he uses this example to get Strathairn to work for him. So he's like, the example is, I don't do work, and there's a first for everything. I did work. You should do all of this work.
Well, he's trying to get Jason Statham to go to the NCAA. To say we need to recruit freshmen. So technically that's the first time for everything, but you're right, is he's trying to get him to do work. And this is like this subplot, which ultimately I don't think they get the NCAA to, oh no, they do.
Yeah.
They finally do.
Let's hop back.
We'll get into that because I want to talk about, I know this is a thing about dads, but I definitely want to talk about, and I'm sure you flagged it, one of the weirdest filmmaking choices in this movie, but that's later.
Yeah.
It's just it's a scene sandwich that's very, I don't know. It doesn't matter.
We learn that McConaughey is fertile and he's training his sons to tackle trees. So
yes,
that's also, it's his kookiness is masculine. It's something that comes from like, he makes strong progeny.
Right.
But then immediately after that, McConaughey tells him that his heart hurts for the town. And that's why he wants to come help. He's going to come coach the town cure their grief with some good old-fashioned American giddy-up.
Right. Not just the team, the town. He coaches everybody he talks to.
That's right. And that's another kind of dad trope, as we're going to find, is that you have these characters, or you get them in the amalgam or the aggregate, where it's like everyone's a coach to somebody. So he's immediately hired because he's the only guy who wants the job.
Yeah.
Uh,
Again, Mary Poppins.
Mary
This could have
Poppins.
ended with him flying away.
He could
Being like, my work here is done.
even though, as we're going to find, he really does nothing.
No, he doesn't.
He just does some football, which is kind of the thing that he starts and he says. He's like, look, I'm just going to do football because it's 1970 and it's the first press conference. And McConaughey says, he starts off and he says, hey, we got here in town. Electricity worked. Water pressure was high. There was a 6-pack in the fridge and a pound cake on the counter. 4 out of 4 on hospitality. And it's just like he's telling him basically like, yes, the good old days,
He's
like
a folksy man.
he's a folksy man. Everything's folksy. And then he also tells him that they're going to lose.
Yeah.
Like they don't expect anything because we don't have a team still.
Right.
And when someone asks if it's disrespectful to bring the team back on so early, he completely deflects the question and just says, hey, I'm a football coach. I don't answer questions like that.
Says, that's what I do. That's why I'm here is the full question. I'm on his side, by the way, about that.
Yeah.
Because they are like, how do you reconcile this? And he's like, listen, I got hired to be the coach. You can ask the other people about that.
Who also probably don't know, but here we are. I'm not here to answer that.
Right. It's just like, it's not up to me, you know?
We get some more scenes where he's eccentric, but he's also, it works. So I think it falls into the trope that like that they're clever. The protagonist is usually clever in these movies.
Right.
They use, tactics that are
Again, unconventional,
not
clever.
violent and not like brute.
Yep. Working within the system.
And the example they give is that he uses word association and remembers people's names. He says, I'm no good at remembering names, but, I'll get it. I'll get it. Let me just do a little word association in front of you, which is bizarre. And he also tells all the kids as soon as he meets them that they're not going to do well. So he's very transparent, but he's not going anywhere.
He's a straight shooter.
I will be loyal. Because you're paying me, and let's brass tacks. We get another scene where McConaughey tells Strathairn that a story about it. Oh yeah, this is the one where he's crapping his pants. We talked about that. So fast forward, he meets Matthew Fox for the first time, and he's like, "You should be the assistant coach again."
Well, slow it down.
Yeah, okay.
Because Matthew Fox is mourning in the most dad way imaginable.
Oh, nice, yeah.
By building a shed.
Building a shed, baby.
Yeah. The most dad mourning process ever is he's fixing up the shed. And it's like, oh yeah. And they have like a quick conversation about the wood planks. I'm like, yeah, that's what they love. Give them that. Give the daddies some wood plank talk.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but the wood plank, everything's a metaphor in these types of films too, especially when it's like McConaughey is the character that he is, where he's like, I'm espousing essentially, I'm coach. This happens in like Friday Night Lights and other sports shows and movies. Everything is a metaphor. And in this case, the idea is that he doesn't use like 1x4s, but 1x6s. And the phrase that he uses is same coverage, less bored. Because he sees everything in terms of football.
It's metaphors, but they're dad metaphors.
They're dad metaphors.
Because he also says, didn't that train derail last summer? And he's like, back on the tracks. And again, trains and shed building.
Trains and sheds. Equal sign town and football. Basically, Matthew Fox is like, nah, I'm not going to do that. He mentions the thing that I mentioned earlier. I feel like I killed those boys. And McConaughey, he's like, I don't have an answer for that. Again, just like in the press conference, he's like,
I'm just a football man.
I just only talk about football. Even though it's like, you're clearly not just talking about football. You're making all these metaphors, but all right. Because he only represents forward progress in the movie. He's not actually talking about healing. That's what I wanted to talk about.
He's not from around there. Like the whole Matthew McConaughey is like the stranger is like, come on, everybody, swallow your feelings and let's play football.
That's right. That's what I want to talk about.
It's time to move on. Let's stop mourning these dead kids.
Right.
He gives an inspirational speech on their graves later, which we'll go into, which again is not like It's just like, yeah, football.
Right. The dad version of healing is moving forward, not answering the big questions you have to answer necessarily.
There's no healing. Same with Ian McShane.
Right.
It is all like, we need to just keeps our fucking eyes on the prize.
Right.
Kate Mara, you need to get the fuck to LA because that's what you were going to do before my son died. Everybody's just going to
You got to live your life, and that's how we answer grief, which they're not wrong about, in particular with grief, but they're also just paving over how to grieve.
Yeah, to spoil a little spoiler, the thing of the ring where he was like, think of it every time you put it on, think of my son. I honestly, when I heard that, I was like, that's not a bad idea. That's a good way to grieve someone. You move on with your life, but you always have a little reminder of them.
Right.
And you think about him every day because you love them. And then at the end, she gives him the ring back and goes to LA. And I was like, I don't actually think that was the right thing to do. I think you keep the ring because that is a reminder of this person you loved. It's like, it's not, they like don't quite nail it. Or pawn the ring for LA money.
Yeah,
LA is expensive.
LA is expensive, man.
Yeah.
So we get this sequence now after he's kind of like he's gotten his roots in. The coach finally takes his desk, takes a look at the door. It says coach. He adjusts his nameplate. Cinematographer's version of pissing all over the place because he puts down a picture of his family. He's here now, baby. And Matthew Fox walks in, and off screen, I guess he decided I'll accept the coach job.
This is I think we might see this in dad films, which is I'm never going back.
All right, I'm coming back.
I'm back. Yeah.
And they shake hands in a way that really rivals Predator. Just real hunky stuff, Dave.
Yeah, it's real weird.
And then we get a Finding Boys montage.
Yeah, another crossing the list.
Yeah, no one wants to play for the shitty dead team. And so that's what that montage looks like, is everyone's going to other teams, specifically their rival, West Virginia University.
Right.
Finally, the NCAA letters, basically because they're trying to petition to play freshmen because they just can't get any recruitment going because everyone's already, said I'll play for this university by the time that they're sophomores. Now, the NCAA doesn't allow that at this time. They're not allowed to recruit that because they're deemed too young. So they're asking them to just lift it in this one case in order for our town to heal. And there's a speech they're in a basketball court.
Yeah. I need to talk about this.
Just to change things up. Yeah, hit me with it.
Yeah, no, first of all, the basketball courts, they're like using the balls to mean the kids. And I was like, come on, you have a sport that this movie's around.
But they already did that. They already showed that sport.
But so what you're about to describe to me, I understand in my mind what probably happened, but I just thought this was... So they're in there, and then Jason Statham comes in, and Matthew McConaughey gives a metaphor because he's like, the NCAA isn't responding. And he's like, when you proposed to your wife, did you do it over the phone? Did they reject you in a letter? You got to go there. So they cut to him going there in Kansas City, and it's the rain and it's night. And he goes to the guy and says, I need to talk to you. Then they cut back to the same gym at the same time of day. And Matthew Fox and
24
Matthew
hours
McConaughey
later
are standing in the same spot. And he walks in and his shoes are wet from being in the rain. And I am just so confused about how time works in this scene.
Yeah, no, it's not very clear. I also think this is a great time to mention that this was directed by McG.
Yeah, that was the big surprise at the end.
Oh,
so I watched this whole movie, and at the end it said directed by McG, and I went, what? Directed by McG? The gall on this film to be directed by McG.
Yeah. It's like his dad movie. It's so great.
Yeah, but no, just to stress this. So it means that either Matthew McConaughey and Matthew Fox stayed in this gym for an entire day, or they just happened to be there. Again, it's very clear they filmed the two scenes back to back because it's like the exact same lighting.
Yeah, it's the same golden light, and I think they're trying to say that was that was sunset and then he went and was gone for a whole night and came back and now it's sunrise. That's what
Right.
they're trying to say. But also, he's still wet, and that drive
and
is
that
still like
adds-
4 hours, and I don't know.
Right,
how
that's
you're
even
still
more
wet.
questions, right?
Right. So it's not great.
It's bad filmmaking. Like if you played this on mute, you would have no idea what you're seeing with these three scenes. It's just context of what they're saying helps a little because you can. I think the implication is they were there all night, but it's really fucking.
But
confusing.
why are they there all night is also
Right.
a thing. So
Why would
there's
they be
no
there all
way
night?
in which
Yeah.
you get out of this and it doesn't have a weird. It's not weird. But
Yeah, it
anyway,
is- yeah.
he returns from petitioning the NCAA in person, like you do, and he returns feet wet, and he did it. Guess what? They can now recruit freshmen. McConaughey lifts him up and carries him like a baby because that's
And
what
we
you do in
get-
sports.
Yep. And I think we now get our third montage
Another boy montage.
set to CCR to Credence. I
yeah.
was like, that's a dad film. That's a dad film.
A dad film, and they're trying to find the biggest, youngest boys like America has to offer, basically. What a crop!
Yeah.
And we get a training montage as well after that. After they get like some players that were like, okay, now we recognize that guy and that guy.
I want to know how bad the montage is because they show each kid doing a very football-like action, and then immediately one of the Matthews walks into shot and is like, "Hi, I'd like to recruit you." So like the baseball player creams a kid, and then they walk in. The soccer player kicks it real far, and then they immediately walk in. So like they're showing them do like their signature move, immediately.
I mean, that is.
I get it, but it's like it's just very efficient in a way that's very convenient.
Taste is taste. I'm gonna say that like X-Men First Class does the exact same montage, but with
and it's also
superpowers.
bad.
Okay, yeah. So you just don't like that. That's fine.
I think it's cheesy.
It is cheesy. It's like I think it's efficient because it's like it's doing like 9 things at once, but
Yeah.
it's also gets tired. And I see what you mean there. If that's
Right,
your
it's
argument.
fine. It's more filmmaking. It's like we said, McG. So
Yeah, it's McG. It's very
move on.
simplistic. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's definitely that's the whole point is that we get a bunch of boys, and now we get a training montage, and it's even more of an extended montage, and they realize that they're going to have to be crafty again, and it comes in the form of the type of offense. They're like, our offensive line, which protects the quarterback, is terrible because we just don't have the players. They're not big enough. So we're going to try this other offensive strategy called the veer, which is only played by their rivals, West Virginia University. And so they do something that is unthinkable in football, which is to go and ask them. And that's ridiculous, right? Because you don't ask your rivals, hey, tell me how you run your offense.
I mean, you're telling me that.
I am.
Yeah. I was thinking
You're like,
about.
oh, okay.
So this is a different conversation, but college sports and high school sports, my head is always like, the point is to teach, right? Mm-hmm. And you're going to tell me, obviously, that's not the point. Mm-hmm. The point is for these kids to get for these college teams to win and to like, the way I think of it is like, shouldn't this college and high school football be in the interest of the
You
kids?
sweet summer child.
Like getting them. And so like, I think the coaches should talk all the time with each other because I don't think it should matter if they win or not. I think the point is, I think what a school should be proud of is like, how many kids graduate to get jobs in sports or something like that.
Mm-hmm. That is what they're teaching them. It's a teaching moment. That's what happens.
I get
in real
that
life.
they need to win and lose in order to.
They're teaching them to crush the windpipes of their opponents. That's what they're teaching, and because that's everything is winning, right? That's the posit of sports,
right? And I get it. I get that this is unheard of. I just I liked that it was so like because they got dead kids on their side.
Yep.
Fighting for them. So basically this other college is like, go ahead, fuck it. We're not playing you this year. And I was thinking about how the other teams must address them where when they're playing against them, are they in the locker room like, yeah, fuck those dead kids. Let's cream them.
It's like that line in Goon where he's like, we're playing divorced dads. It's just like, yeah, put it in perspective. These kids are hurting. Everyone is hurting. They even reference it at one point. At one point, Matthew Fox says, like, we're just going out there and getting like pity applause. So it's very apparent to them that they're like, we understand what we are, but that's not what the movie's about. And we see a scene where we get that, shot right to the gut of emotions that you're allowed to, for dads, we're saying to dads, you're allowed to feel right now. There's a moment where the players come in and the coaches realize that the coaches are watching the Veer film and they see MU and like a cross on the back of their helmets because they're paying respects to the loss of the Marshall team. And McConaughey says to the West Virginia University coach, "First class, coach, first class."
Yep.
And guess what, Dave? I felt emotions.
Nice.
Did you feel emotions, Dave?
Yeah, I felt a little emotions for that scene.
Okay, good. After like 25 minutes of training, then, because it's been an eternity.
I'm not ashamed to say I found this movie very boring.
Yeah, it's just all training. Yeah,
it's all montages, and so like the football stuff, they were smart to like yada yada. They don't spend a lot of time on the games, but it's just. It's tough, man. It's a lot of montages.
It's a lot
of Matthew McConaughey saying, "Let's go there and ask them."
Yeah,
and it's very like, to me, my overall note of this film is that it felt like they didn't have enough movie and they stretched it out a bit.
They did, but it's also this is how sports movies work, dude.
Yeah,
there are a lot of training montage usually. I mean, for example, I'll quote exactly how we get to the first game of the season and they get their ass kicked. It's like this big buildup and then a loss. That's literally Rocky. The whole movie is a training montage essentially, it's mostly like emotionally training, but then an actual training montage and then a 9 minutes of fight and then he loses at the end. I mean, he doesn't, he metaphorically wins, but you get the point.
I think the issue I always have is it's also binary where it's win or lose. There's often characters go, I will do it, or I won't do it, or I'm not going to do it and then I will do it. Am I going to play the game or not? So like it's just that like, unless it's, a guy makes a field full of ghost players, like unless they go really off the rails, sports movies generally do this to me.
Yeah, it's funny because I wouldn't even call Field of Dreams a sports movie. It's a sports appreciation movie. It doesn't actually have a lot of sports being played.
That's true.
But in any case, it is, about sports. So it gets, I'm not saying it's not that.
Right. But we're not here to talk about sports. We're here to talk about daddies.
We're not. We're here to talk about how this movie is a dad movie. And
and so we're hitting the trauma point, right? Where everybody starts going, oh, right. Trauma.
Right. All the town looks disappointed. We're like, all that work and all we feel we've done is disrespect the, as they call the Thundering Herd. That's the name that they give the pet name for the team. And, Coach Matthew Fox, who kind of was the one who's kind of, running that argument in close, starts to have like an anxiety attack. He has PTSD from like essentially survivor's guilt. So we really feel things couldn't be the lowest they could ever be, right? Like this is the midpoint essentially. And morale is low, players are injured, no one wants to play anymore, coaches are despairing. Matthew Fox hits Anthony Mackie during practice at one point, like pushes him over because he hit another student unnecessarily, like a dirty hit. And he says, "You think you're the only one who's had it rough? So once again, we need a daddy coach."
Yeah, daddy needs to step in.
All right. And Fox mentions that the old coach believed, again, we get this vibe of winning is the only thing that matters because it's how you show them your worth. It's how you honor them. If you lose, you're disgracing them, and that's just the system that he believes in. But as we're going to learn soon, that ain't true, and Matthew McConaughey is going to have a realization. But before that, we get a scene where Anthony Mackie, whose shoulder is now fucked, And he is trying to be a daddy, even though he's like a kid, right? Because he's captain of the team and he wants to be coach dad, but he can't take the field, which is something that I think we're going to see a lot of in dad movie tropes.
Is this where he's slapping his shoulder?
He slaps his shoulder. McConaughey hits it and he's like, yeah, your shoulder ain't good. I'm slapping it. He's like, it's fine.
My shoulder's fine. My shoulder's fine.
And that's the trope I'm talking about, is that I'm hurt and I can't play the game or I can't do the thing. And in war movies, we're going to get that as well. Yep.
And it's the okay for a man to cry because it's crying and it's emotional, but there's also hitting. Yeah. So it's okay.
It's okay to feel powerless. And that's kind of what this movie is right about. Coach Dad has got you. He's got you all.
He's got you. Yeah. He's cradling you in his balls.
And so we start to pick up a little bit more. Dave, I have a question for you. Have you ever had the urge to dress up with your friends and like bump chests and yell like go, 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 go for like 2 minutes?
What?
Hey, you've never had that urge?
To dress up as what?
Just dress up like each other.
Like your own friends?
Yeah, dress up like your friends. Or you dress up as something together.
Oh, you dress up together.
Like a team. Yeah.
I mean, I was part of a punk scene, so you could argue that
you did.
That's what moshing and punk is.
That's right. Yelling go, 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 right?
Yeah, you kind of just described punk rock.
Right.
Yeah.
And you pick up your friends and you swing them around and they run extra fast, right?
Yeah, nope.
I just wanted to hit you with that because there's a montage where that happens and I was like, I bet Dave had a reaction to that because he loves sports. But you're right. Yeah. Punk, it's all the same. So
it's
really,
all the same. It
fucking knocked it out of the park.
Montage, but you're right.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So Ian McShane. So we cut to another scene. After we've learned like Coach Dad needs to save this, which we've yet to see Coach Dad really save anything. Ian McShane fires Strathern and basically says that the football club is hurting the town for all the said reasons. And Strathern fires back. This is not about the town. This is not about football. This is about the loss of your son and you just won't deal with it. And so we get another quote powerless man who needs to grieve and move on. And then Matthew McConaughey finally comes head to head. Matthew McConaughey meets Ian McShane. They finally go to the town diner. Ian McShane, Kate Mara are there. McShane chews McConaughey out and he says, you don't know shit about this town. And guess what? Football's over and you can't do a thing about it. And you don't know my son, so don't act entitled. Which he's kind of right about, but it's an emotional response.
Yeah, because McConaughey, again, it's very weird where he's like, come on, gang, let's get it all back together. And it's like, you're not mourning anyone.
Right.
So.
As soon as he says that, everyone is like, comes at him with that, and he just has to be quiet.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that's just how he can't rally the troops in the way that someone who is an insider would rally the troops. And then we get the big scene where like the realization happens, which is really, as you mentioned, kind of like, if there was one thing that I was bored about the movie, it wasn't honestly the montage, reliance on montage, which I actually find fun, but the fact that there was no emotional steps to be made until this point, because at this point we're just basically saying, and we kind of said it time and time again, dad needs to step in, and in a dad movie, this is where they would occur. And then they meet in a church, and it's Matthew Fox and it's Matthew McConaughey. And they're talking again about how winning is everything. And McConaughey says, I had a realization. And it's after I started coaching for this town. I just don't think that that's true anymore. It matters most that we play the game. We just keep on moving. We move on. Over time, we'll eventually become like every other team where winning will be the thing that matters. But for now, we just need to not let it die. So it's true, Dave. Sometimes you just need to kind of show up, but that's not like a realization that is like someone said something and someone changed. It was just a eureka moment,
right?
That he kind of regurgitates for us, right? Yeah, which is not great, but it's true.
That's again what the problem with this film is. I think it is kind of stagnant emotionally, and nothing really happens. That's for most of the movie. Something big happens at the beginning, and then it's just sort of people going places and talking and just not even emotionally changing much. And then
that's
at the
what
end,
I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's a good dad movie to bring to the table, because it's a problem is actually in disguise, at least for this podcast, a signal of why a dad movie, because it's a dad's movie refusal to do the other thing, which is they could have made it something else. They could have made an emotional arc, but they chose to basically do 2 beats instead of like 3 or 4.
Right.
Because the next scene is everyone apparently heard his speech in the church, and now the town is on parade for the game day. And it's like they all listened to him. Well, it's
Right.
they would come to the same they essentially came to the same realization that he did. They didn't even need to hear it from anybody. So it's like there wasn't really a problem, right? If the town is just like, "Oh yeah, we like that, football's back."
Yeah, and here's the thing. This is why this is both a dad movie and it kind of fails.
Mhm.
As far as I'm concerned, this should be where the movie ends. The
Right.
whole point is that everybody's getting back into it.
Right.
And you should be focusing on the other characters mourning and stuff. You know, obviously the characters would be at a different point here
Right.
if this was the end. But in terms of the football arc, it never it's not supposed to matter, the game.
Yeah, it's not supposed to matter, and it doesn't really matter in this movie, but like they still play through it because it's a sports movie, and it would feel weird if you didn't do the big sports finish.
Right.
But yeah, I think the thing I wanted to dig into a little bit about the tropes of dad stuff is where the tropes kind of stop being helpful, or where the hypocrisy that we kind of talked about in The Judge kind of comes a little bit more apparent when you try to simplify things a little bit more.
Right. The way the judge tried to have reverence for the system and how it failed to actually give a good message to it. I think this is going to be a common problem where when we do like military movies, it'll be this way too.
Yep.
Where this is trying to give reverence to certain things but it's failing. And I think it's failing while talking about like, grief.
Yeah, it's a different problem. Football can't solve everything, but you want it to so badly.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like because it's trying to itemize kind of like morale, like the concept of morale and the concept of people saying stay the course is the number one priority of any dad movie, I find.
Right.
So far,
It's I hate to bring it to 9/11, but it's that idea. It's the show must go on. It's the post 9/11 like when it was like 2002 and movies are coming out again and we're like, we're going to continue on the way we always have. Where it's like there's this big elephant in the room at the same time.
Right.
Which like they're not wrong, which is like, well, what else are we going to do? Of course you're going to continue on. But this movie I would argue is like, you got to get back on that horse immediately. And it's like, but they're all dead. Like you literally can't. There's no one to get on the horse.
It's navigating that space. Yeah.
Take a fucking second. And like, for that reason, there's a lot of whiplash with the characters. Like Anthony Mackie, he's really hard to read sometimes. Because like the first thing he's like, we're bringing back the football stuff. And then when Matthew McConaughey shows up, he's like cold to him. And I was like, isn't this what you wanted?
This is exactly the thing. You're getting exactly what you want.
And now he's like, who's this coach they're bringing in? It's like, you said we need a coach. We want to bring it back. So there's that feeling of like, everybody's like not sure what they feel about it.
Yeah. And that might be actually true about grief, about how some people have to go through grief, is that there is some of that hypocrisy, but that's not the hypocrisy we're talking about. It's the idea of what's the solvency. There's a whole another aside that we can talk about, probably in a more relevant movie, but might come up, is solvency always the first answer? Because that's a normal dad kind of trope itself, right? Where it's like,
wanting to
I'm going to go fix it. But for this one, it is kind of that, in the need that every movie has a problem, it must be fixed. But even when it comes to the fixing of the problem, it's not like anything actually did fix it. It's the fact that enough time had passed in the movie that it was okay for everyone to just move on.
Exactly. Like this,
and that's what dads want.
Yeah.
Dad wants you to be, you're angry at dad right now. That's fine. But just give it a few weeks and you'll be happier about it. And that's how I'm going to solve the problem.
It's not, that's the funny thing is like, it almost feels like the football focusing on it is like a crutch to not face the grief. and instead they almost like weaponize it and use it. Like we're getting to the part where he gives a fucking speech on their graves, and it's like this doesn't feel like he's respecting anything.
Right.
And it's like that idea of like we're gonna solve this by just playing football, and it's like I don't think you solved a thing.
You didn't solve a thing.
I think everybody
Time
worked out
occurred.
their grief aside, like despite this.
Yes.
Like yeah.
Yes. So yeah, anyway, let's just keep pushing forward. I do want to have one more line about this, but like, as you mentioned, there's a few other tricks.
We can wrap it up at the end this way. Yeah.
They got a few other tricks up their sleeve. So while everyone's on parade for game day, Kate Mara and Ian McShane have this talk about his dead wife, and he tells her that he knew that Kate Mara and his son's dream was to go to California when they got married, and he says you should go there and live your life. So he moved on as well, even though literally like 4 scenes ago he was like, I'm never going to stop being me. But the team goes to, as you mentioned, pay respects at the old team's grave before the next game, which made me realize that I don't know why this scene made me realize. I guess it's because I just watched The Judge as well, that there's no pissing scene in this movie, though there is a shitting.
There's shitting though.
Talked about the 4-year-old shitting.
Clugging the beers. They clug the beers.
But it's unfair that no one shits or pisses on anyone's grave, I guess is what I was thinking.
It's a shame.
And I guess that trope's falling apart. But
we got graveyards in both. We got dead wives.
We got dead wives.
Women not safe.
Not
Continue
safe.
to not be safe.
And they got to get out of the picture. Just get out of here. Get out of the movie. So yeah, he gives a speech. He's like, if you play your little shitty hearts out, you may lose, but you cannot be defeated. You know, like they won't defeat your spirit in playing football. And that means the town is healed. Unless they all get on a plane and crash.
I wrote that down. It would be so funny if they all died in a plane crash or a plane landed on them.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
And the town's is like, all right,
that would defeat
Matthew
the town.
Fox personally
like,
puts them all on a plane, and then they all die again, and he's like, great, this again.
Yeah, that would definitely defeat the town.
He just keeps killing the kids that he's responsible for.
Just Mick G. Fucking killing towns. All right, so the final game, and there's a kick right before halftime because it's 0-0 up to the point, and there's a kick, and the kicker's just been shitty all movie. And McConaughey does this thing, and this is a dad trope I'm pointing at. He takes like 4 seconds to look at the little boy in the eyes, and then he like looks at him. And then he just knows he's ready. And he slaps the top of his helmet. And he's like, all right, get in there. And I think we see this trope all the time in dad movies because it's the elucidation of grit. It's like, you got hunger in the eyes. I can tell.
Instinct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's something that is, once again, I was mentioning in the Judge episode. The concept of the ineffable is something that, because I don't know if dads truly understand. I mean, a lot of people have struggles with this. I even do myself. Like, there's something about the ineffable which is like it's better than the things that I can elucidate. Why? Because I don't know. If there were words to say it, that means that we would have those words, and we don't have those words. So
it's funny how these same types of movies, like the vibes of these movies, would laugh at something like astrology.
Right.
But if a man looks into another's eyes and sees the lion in him, he's like, oh, I can feel that.
I can feel your lion right on me. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, they end up winning the game. We're totally going past the sports movie aspect, but I knew
it was mostly montage through the sports. And then the ball in the air is like an emotional metaphor. It's at the beginning and end. And you can argue it argues that it's the plane. You know, they got to catch the plane.
Yeah, it's gonna crash right into their hands. But hope is restored for the team a little bit because they do the unthinkable. They give the game ball to Strathern, who's the non-football guy.
Yep. And he's emotionally affected.
He's like, I'm a part of a team.
Yep. And then they note, like, by the way, the team didn't do great. And
I love that.
That was funny.
I love that. They were like, in the 70s, they lost more games in the 70s than anyone else. Just the most losers, which you'd expect. But I did think it was nice.
It's very funny, like, victory, freeze frame, and they lost ever since.
Ever since. Yeah. Although the reason that the story became sensational is that they did extremely well in the 80s. So like they did have a bounce back. In like a decade later, they became the most winningest team of
once
that
they got
decade.
a better coach.
So there's something about, once they got a better coach, basically just dunking straight on Matthew McConaughey's character.
Yeah.
Just saying, they even say like, he was fired the next year. Like he was not good.
For misconduct.
Yeah, he's now works for the Navy. So it's man, like, so I think there's a lot to unpack because it's how it.
I do want to reveal something about the real character.
Yeah,
I looked him up. One thing he's done since is he would go around country and go. He had on multiple occasions went to the towns and been motivated when that town's team had an accident. Like there was a van accident that killed like 7 kids.
And he would
like
go
a
there
sports
and
team.
he would coach.
He showed on up to help.
All right.
He's like, this is his thing. He's Mary Poppins. He goes town to town looking for dead kids, and he's motivating those towns. And I'm making fun of it, but it's like it's not a bad thing to do with your life.
It's not a bad thing to do. I mean, we get people, scared straight and whatnot. Like people take tragedy and try to make something better out of it. But it is what this movie is about, which is that we definitely need the how do dads deal with grief on like a bigger than they can handle scale. Because
that's
sometimes family
about.
grief, like we saw in the previous episode with the judge, can be dealt with kind of like a one-to-one basis. You can interact with your brother, you can interact with your father, you can get these interactions down. But when it's a town or there's a tragedy that's beyond your means, and I would even say a family is sometimes beyond your means, because everyone needs something different. But like it really is true with like actual like survivor's guilt and actual grief. There is no true answer that fits all, and it is a very dad thing to try to size it up and say, well, what's the best thing, what's the biggest solvency?
Well,
then
there's
let's make
I
sure
think
we do
it's
that for sure.
Going to like what people feel about genders, right? Whereas like women, they overcomplicate stuff, and this is one of those cases where like the answer, like I think dad films are going to want it to be like, it's reverence for the system. The law is the law, right? Like this is the way it is, and we respect the way it is, and you stick by the rules. In my house, you respect my rules. These are the
status
principles.
quo, baby.
And so the idea of like a spectrum or like anything complicated is going to be just thrown right out the window.
Yeah, or one thing working for one person totally not working for another.
Right.
Not in the cards,
Right, which this movie somewhat addresses because, again, Matthew Fox, they kind of just like shit on the character because what we're getting to is at the end they say he never played again or never coached again. They show him crying in the locker room, and what at least they do the thing where January Jones is like, they're all out here, and everybody clapped. But like what they're showing is like, this didn't heal him. None of this helped his grief. And so I appreciate the film at least pointing that out, that like people are still grieving. This didn't fix everything, but it's like the outlier. They're like, yeah, and some wusses can get healed by the football, I guess. It's like an afterthought.
That's right. And that's We Are Marshall.
Yeah, that is We Are Marshall. Directed by McGee. Can't stress enough that what a fucking plot twist that was for me.
I love it. I love it so much. But let's move on for this episode and head to the smoking room where we put our jackets on and grab our pipes, Dave. And this is just our last remarks and conclusions about the film. Specifically what we've been talking about the whole time is let's put it together with the other podcasts that we've been doing and just what we think. What are we verifying so far that we've learned about dad tropes? How are we closer to the perfect dad movie?
It's tough, man, because I think grief, dead wives,
dead women, right?
Yeah, and the concept of dealing with grief. I think we still have reverence for the system and using the system.
Reverence for the system.
To heal emotionally, using a courtroom to heal your relationship with your dad, using football to heal. This weird that weird tying stuff in. I think that's going to be a continued theme. I think pee and poop.
I think this one doesn't have fucking your possible daughter,
but it has daughter-father reverence.
But it does have father-daughter reverence. This does have an inciting incident that is a tragedy. This has using guile as your main go-to in terms of conflict.
Cleverness.
Violence is never really necessary if we can
Straight
avoid it.
Shooting.
Yep. We know that the protagonist has a dick and that works.
Yep. That is a big part of it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Working dick. Dick and piss and shit.
Right.
Yep. I think there is going to be still a pattern of this is another film that is not manly, that they manned up, that they made a dad movie.
I think we're touching the sensitive sides of dad here, because we haven't even gotten into the war movies.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten to the action adventure movies.
Yes.
So we really are trying to hit it from the fringe, which is, kind of, as we said in the last episode, we kind of did that by design, because as this series kind of comes to a head and we do a little bit more, we want those, big ticket dad movies to really hit then.
Yeah, I think we're starting from an interesting place because we're giving ourselves a challenge, which is that these are absolutely dad movies we've already covered. But they are, like you said, they're not action. They're not ones where we'll see the tropes as much, although I suspect we've seen a lot of the tropes already. But
yes,
how the tropes apply to drama is going to be wildly different than how they apply to other things. I would argue, by the way, that in both of these cases, there's so much room to cover both courtroom dramas and sports, because the courtroom drama we chose is very drama heavy. It's less courtroom. And I would argue this is also very drama heavy and less sports.
And less sports, right.
So I think I mentioned Field of Dreams being a film we probably should touch on.
Yeah, we could do A Time to Kill. We could do a Miracle or something like that.
I think 12 Angry Men maybe, because one of the things we're missing from our current lineup, which I won't reveal to people, but we can reveal the next film, but is we don't have the classic old dad films.
Old movies. Yeah, we're choosing more from the 90s, really.
Yeah.
90s and early 2000s, I guess, with The Judge being the exception, because that's like a post-dad movie to me, and that's what started this whole podcast.
Well, yeah, you could argue that there's the way certain music genres have a grunge in the 90s, this is... This 90s
the
is
90s
peak dad
kicked it
movie.
Off. It really did, because we had people it's because we had the Bruce Willises, we had the Kevin Costners, we had the Tommy Lee Jones and the Harrison Fords. And it's also when our listeners have been alive.
Yeah, that's
so
fair.
There's a formula to all these movies, but we're specifically speaking to the formulas therein of these movies.
Right.
But yeah, let's talk about the next movie we're going to discuss. We're going to do another more, quote unquote sensitive kind of genre. We're going to attack the romance. And we're going to do that. So we're going to get real daddy romance, real dad love on you. And the one that we chose for that one, I think you'll be all happy to hear, is The American President.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where also,
Dave.
so some people would go, wait a minute. Aren't you also then tackling political films, political drama? I would say hard no.
Not yet.
In order to have a dad film that's a romance, you got to slather on that political drama.
Yeah,
and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, you do.
So that is that's a romance dad film. We'll do a political drama later. That's a romance. And boy, is it gonna have some fucking reverence.
Oh, the president. Oh my fucking God. Can you get more reverent?
Aaron Sorkin on crack.
Yes.
That is a movie that Aaron Sorkin said he wrote on crack. Take some crack, take some Aaron Sorkin, put it in a jar. That's what comes out.
What a delight to be alive and have this trivia at our fingertips. It's a delight to know you, Dave, and to take this daddy journey with you.
Yeah.
We have been your dads for another leg in our daddy journey.
Yes.
Is there anything else you want to let the good people know?
I will continue to plug Gamefully Unemployed, GAMEFULOY Unemployed. That's the podcast network I do with Tom Ryman. Patreon.com/Gamefully Unemployed. Go check it out. We're Gamefully on Twitter. Just give us a Google. If you like movie podcasts or podcasts about the X-Files or the Star Trek or horror films, we watch movies as well every Friday night with our patrons. There's a bunch of stuff going on over there. GamefullyUnemployed.com. We have a merch store. That's all. Check it out.
Yep. Slap your peepers on it. And while you're doing that, you know the drill. You've been listening to the Small Beans Network. This is, you can go see more at patreon.com/smallbeans, because you're only getting like half our freaking, if you're just watching through the live feed or the free feeds like YouTube and through like, whatever you listen to for podcasts, that is not our Patreon. You're not getting the whole picture, including some shows that Dave just mentioned, but some other shows like Escape from the Multicurse or our movie diaries that we do, because Mike and I are making a movie called Papa Bear transparently in front of you. But yeah, that's the gist. Come drop some money down. And if not, we'll just tip of the hat to you, and we'll see you next time.
Tip that hat. See you next time. Catch us next time. Catch us like a forest catching an airplane. Crashing.
Like so many Marshall dead kids.
Man, on a football movie, I could have used another catch analogy, but I didn't. I used a plane crash.
You sweet summer child.